some questions that the team was asked during ETH Barcelona. We mostly answer all of them, but I left some questions without answer for us to answer in this session. So basically, the objective of this session is share the Giveth's narrative to have in mind when representing or presenting Giveth, and have some clarity around the key messages, and also to answer together some questions that we've been asked. So, Lauren, do you feel okay to start with the basics around like the do's and don'ts? Like just like general things.
Oh, sure. You want me to go through the document of the stuff that you guys wrote? I mean, I'd be happy more to like comment and then provide my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. Feel free to start and comment in the highlights that you feel.
Okay, so you want me to go through this doc?
No. You go ahead and you start in whatever you feel, and then I think that we can just like answer some of the questions that didn't had a clear answer for me to put in the doc.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I'm down to do this kind of like more collaboratively and kind of like hack through things, because I don't think that there's like necessarily an exact right way to represent Giveth. But one of the things I think is really important is to make sure that when you are speaking about Giveth, that you're like fully immersed in like exactly what we're trying to get through. I think something that I'm noticing, especially with like a lot of new contributors, is that we don't have everybody kind of like onboarded into like the vision of Giveth and like where we're going and why we're doing things and like what is the potential here. So yeah, I mean, a lot of you do already understand this, like based on the people that are in this call. A lot of you are already familiar with that. But I think like kind of getting like clear alignment on our mission is really important. So like I'm happy to kind of talk about that. But then like other general things for like representing is like speaking from like your own experience and from what you know is really important. Like talking about like if you don't understand what an augmented bonding curve is, don't talk about an augmented bonding curve. And if you want to learn about what it is, then ask someone who knows about what it is and then like can walk you through it and describe it. That I think is like also really important. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to just like ramble and talk. So maybe like we could kind of go back and forth with like questions or kind of go through things one at a time.
Sure. So I would love to go to some of the questions that the team got during ETH Barcelona, because these are the things that you're mentioning already. So, for example, what's Giveth's mission? In the documentation, there's the quote that says, to build a culture of giving that rewards and empowers those who give to projects, to society, and to the world. I don't know if you have anything to add on to this.
Yeah, totally. So this mission statement, some of you were here when we like crafted it, but many of you weren't. It was actually something that like came about collaboratively from the team. And we wanted to kind of like summarize in like a single sentence, like everything that we were doing. I mean, if I'm going to like make it the short form, I usually say like Giveth's mission is to reward and empower those who give. And like this, like to projects, to society, and to the world thing is kind of important. Like the purpose of Giveth is to kind of shift this narrative around public goods in the donation space so that it's not depending on sacrifice, and it's not like there's like multiple different problems with like the current society like systems that we're part of. They encourage individualism. It's like capitalist based, so there's all this like feedback and innovation in like the private goods sector, but then when it comes to public goods, it's kind of like we depend on governments and nonprofits and these inefficient systems with bad feedback mechanisms. So then nonprofits pop up and they start taking care of these public goods like the environment, and then they need to beg for donations. And then so in Web3, we're like optimizing donations. It's like we're creating incentives for donating. We're creating cool new ways of donating, like quadratic matching and like donating like with NFTs, and you can like create all this upside. But like what we're really trying to get to with Giveth is a place where like the incentives are totally aligned so that you're actually getting the most rewards when you're contributing the most to public good. So this is like the mission statement. We're rewarding and empowering those who give to projects, society, and the world. And so it's like, it's multifaceted. The one part is like, we're rewarding and empowering those who give. Starting out with like the donation platform, we've got Givebacks. You're donating to projects, you're getting Give tokens back. It's like an incentive to donate or like a reward for donating. And then to society, it's like we're trying to make it so that projects are more empowered to do the work that they're doing to contribute value to society. And then like the long-term vision is to just make it so that like there's not actually sacrifice involved in this, and that like actually everybody is like financially rewarded when they contribute the most value to the collective. So it's kind of like this like long narrative that like goes around and around of this just like simplified statement, rewarding and empowering those who give to projects, society, and the world. Yeah, and I think that there's just like different multiple aspects you can look at and like different takes you can like glean out of that. With like the greater mission of Giveth to kind of like really use Web3 tech to change these public goods funding systems so that everybody involved can add more value to the collective and like be individually rewarded.
Yeah, thank you. And on this same line, we have more questions gathered by the team. For example, in some of the presentations that are there available, there's they start in this saying that about the 10.5 trillion spent by governments, and everyone is losing money. And then Suk is asking, what does this actually mean? Turn into an investment, how? So because the last sentence of this statement is Web3 has the potential to build new systems for creating public goods that harness this funding and turn it into an investment. So turn it into an investment, how? Yeah,
so this whole like $10.5 trillion meme, which has like now become very popular, it was something that like Griff researched and looked up to actually just like figure out like what is government and nonprofit spending. And like as I was talking about before, governments and nonprofits are the number one providers of public goods. And the way that they're funded to do that is via donations or taxes. Governments get taxes from the people who are like working part of their system. And then they use those taxes to build things like roads or like infrastructure for water. And they build these public goods that we all need. And then like when the governments aren't doing a good job of taking care of things like the environment, then like good people are like, I'm going to start nonprofits, and they look for funding through donations. So it's like this whole, like, this is how much money is actually just spent. It's not invested. It's just spent on creating public goods. It's this system that we're part of has set it up so that everybody needs to sacrifice in order for us to like maintain this collective value. It's just because these systems are set up to satisfy, like for people to be chasing and satisfying individual need. So like the how to turn it into investment is a critical part of the Giveth roadmap. You guys have probably all heard of GIRVs, and maybe it's kind of still like a bit of an elusive concept, but GIRVs is the turning it into an investment end goal. There's like multiple different parts to get there along the way where you could get different upside, but like GIRVs is really the end goal, where instead of having projects be just looking for donations, we want to make it so that projects can have their own token economies. So like Giveth, for example, is kind of like a regen economy with like, we don't have a GIRV, we don't have a bonding curve, but we have our own token. And so if you wanted to support Giveth, you could donate directly to Giveth, or you could buy and hold the Give token. And buying and holding the Give token would like pump up the Give price. It would bring more stability to the economy. And then you could just like vote in how Giveth is being run. You could vote in Snapshot. You could use your Give tokens to vote in the garden and kind of influence the decisions that we're making and what we're doing. So like GIRVs will basically be like empowering nonprofit projects on the ground to have those sorts of systems So instead of needing donations, people could actually invest in the projects and get tokens back. And if the nonprofit's a DAO, then the people who hold the tokens can govern the work that the nonprofit is doing. And I really like why would this be useful? I really like using the example of like a school and having public education. If there's a school system in your community and your kids are going to that school and there's like some contentiousness around like what type of curriculum should be provided to the children, parents in that community would probably want to have a say in it. But right now we have these like governments that are providing public goods, and there's not really like a lot of opportunity for parents to provide feedback to the school system that goes to like the Ministry of Education that kind of trickles down. But if like the school it had a GERV and was its own DAO, and it was this like nonprofit project that was providing this public good, providing public education for kids, then parents and teachers and other people who care about that education could become shareholders, could become token holders by either providing capital or by gaining tokens through like expertise and labor. It's kind of like it's kind of like what we did with the TEC. If any, like a lot of you are part of the TEC and some of you are like more loosely part of the TEC, like the TEC launched a bonding curve and did this whole like collaborative economics thing and like built the culture. And then when they were launching their token economy, they minted an amount of tokens and they gave some of the tokens to people who were providing labor and expertise and some of the tokens to people who provided capital that was kind of like backing the token economy, that was like collateral in the bonding curve. So it's like you have people who have labor and expertise and people who provide capital become shareholders in the decision making of the TEC. And this is what we want to do with like nonprofits. It's kind of like anyway, I would love like people would ask questions of like, I don't understand this part, or like, I don't understand how this goes on, because I talk about this so much that it's become like just things my brain knows. So yeah, does anyone have any like questions or any parts of that doesn't make sense?
I guess my question is, so you talk about turning like public good projects into region economies, right? So, yeah. And you're going to try to like, in order to the region economy to be created, you need to kind of like help them release a token or something like that. Do we have a tool plan to do this, or how would Giveth help like the project create a new token or a new economy?
Yeah, so this is like the work that the Common Stack is doing. Like in the bigger Giveth Galaxy narrative, the Common Stack is supposed to be like the applied research arm of Giveth, and they're helping region economies launch in the Web3 space with like people who kind of understand DAOs and understand tech. So the TEC was like a pilot project. It was a pilot region economy launched by the Common Stack, and now the Common Stack wants to do more of that. They wanted to do one with grassroots econ, but then there's like some craziness that's going on there where grassroots econ wants kind of something different, but they're going to try to like help support other Web3 savvy people launch their own region economies and kind of like iterate on like what's the best way to do that. So systems like praise and collaborative economics are like things that are being built to make it easy for like any nonprofit to launch their own region economy. Like we're not at the point yet where we have all these tools and this like nice like package that we hand people and we're like, this is how you build your community, your culture as a DAO, and this is how you like launch your token economy. But that's kind of like the work that the Common Stack is doing, and the work that Giveth is doing is like setting up the system so that we're like onboarding projects into Web3 so that everything is poised, that once we have like this tech ready to empower nonprofits to become region economies, then they're already like in some way connected with Web3 and connected with this like overall thinking of DAOs.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Well, wait, I want to know if it makes sense to Franco. And then
you can go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, wait, well, maybe, yeah. Franco, why don't you confirm? Sorry, I can wait on this. I'll bring it up in a minute.
No, it's okay. I was gonna continue to the next question that we had, but you can ask. Go ahead, Corey. No worries.
Okay, that made sense to me. Just the question is, what if a lot of people don't understand economics? That's one thing. So when you talk about microeconomy, a lot of people are like, "What is that?" And then you talk about a regen economy, they might be like, "What is that?" So then you get into you kind of end up sidelining the conversation instead of like focusing on Giveth. We're then explaining economics and economies. Do you have a suggestion for? And sometimes, people have limited attention, right? Like in that moment when they're excited about Giveth, you kind of maybe don't want to go down that road of like conversation. Is there a layman's term that could be like an approved layman's term to use instead of economy, but helping nonprofits? For instance, I've heard in the past something like become profitable DAOs.
Yeah.
Right? Like an alternative to microeconomy and regen economy. If you have more time with that person, that could be like language to use, or if you know what background they're coming from. But if they're not coming from that kind of background, what would be another way to say it?
Yeah, I like successful DAOs. It seems strange to say like a profitable DAO, even though it's like we do want them to be profitable, but it's like strange to think about a profitable DAO. But I would like a successful DAO would be one that has like a stable token economy, that has like good decentralized governance around their common resources. And I think calling it something like that, especially since like DAO is like such a term that, I mean, people who are like looking into Giveth and people who are learning about this stuff like already kind of understand. And then if they don't, it's almost easier to explain what a DAO is than it's definitely easier to explain a DAO than it is to explain a bonding curve. So yeah, exactly. I think that's a good way.
Successful DAO. Okay, yeah. I think it's good we could add that in. Because when you just have a couple minutes with that person, sometimes I see eyes sort of glaze over when we start using terminology that might be just a couple steps too far. And also then you do go down that rabbit hole of, well, what is that? And what is that? And what is that? It depends on the situation. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And this is what I think like conversations like this, like internally with our own team, where it's like, how can we get people to like more or less like understand where we're going and then have like new ways of explaining it based on like their perspectives and where they come from. Like I have a really technical background, so I'm like technical stuff. I understand the technical stuff. And then we'll get into the details of like how a GERB will work and stuff that will lose people. And so if like you guys are listening and you're kind of like trying to understand the gist of this, it's like what we want to do with Giveth is bring nonprofits into Web3 and then use this great Web3 tooling we're building around DAOs to make it so that like nonprofits have decentralized governance and don't need to beg for donations. And then this is like and then people who back them can instead be investors. So the question is like turn into investment how is where you get into the details. But like what was like written in this doc here that Almond is sharing is like Web3 has the potential to build new systems for creating public goods that harnesses funding and turn into investment. Like this is kind of like in more layman's terms without getting into the nitty gritty of exactly how a good way of saying that kind of like GERB's concept.
Perfect. Thank you, Lauren. It was a great explanation. So the next question, I think it's a little bit related. So like, for example, like if a project or like, let's imagine in the future, right, when we're like onboarding projects for them to create like a region economy. So like, how can explain to them like where do you get the funds to like make the token, or like how do you like kind of create a token? Like this is the question, like where does the tokens come from, or how can Giveth afford to do this, right? How can you afford to like create a token and create an economy?
Yeah, so this is like the Giveth roadmap. And, Griff gave a talk at SBS that Tropical Mangoes is making into a blog post that really explains this Giveth roadmap well, but I'll kind of like touch on it a little bit. So Give Power is a critical point of like, where will this capital backing come from? Like with Give Power, like the original idea with Give Power was that like people could like lock their tokens behind projects lock their Give tokens behind projects, signaling support for those projects. And then that like boosts the project and they get more Give power, they get more benefit. So this is kind of like, you guys all already kind of like understand Give power. Like we're about to be launching it. Most of you have done testing. So it's like Give power leads to GERVs. When you have, when you're launching a bonding curve, the way that it works is that you have some token that acts as collateral in the curve. It's like backing the token, and then other tokens are like minted from the bonding curve, the project's tokens. So in the case of the TEC, we had like a raise where people like put in funds. It's called a hatch. They put in XDAI, and that XDAI was collected to be collateral in the bonding curve that mints TEC tokens. So if you want TEC tokens, if you want to mint or burn TEC tokens, you're like basically like interacting with TEC and XDAI. It's like if you want to mint TEC tokens, you send in XDAI, it mints you TEC. If you want to burn your TEC tokens, you send them to the curve, and then some of the collateral, the XDAI that's held in the curve, is released. So this is like how a bonding curve works. And the way that GERVs will work on Giveth is like people who are using Give power, like basically signaling support for projects using their Give tokens, they'll have an opportunity to decide to opt into the project. So it's like the Give tokens that they're using to signal support for a Giveth project. Once that project has like a lot of Give power and is like successful on the Giveth platform, the people who are backing that project with Give power, they'll have the choice of becoming like a hatcher and using their Give tokens as collateral in the curve and getting project tokens, or they could just decide not to do that. So this is kind of like where that capital comes from to kickstart the microeconomy, to kickstart the bonding curve, is actually from Give power. Give tokens are used to signal support on projects, and then the people who are using that Give power system can back the bonding curve for that project. So it's like Give tokens are in the bonding curve, and then project tokens are coming out. If you want to mint project tokens, you have to send Give tokens to the bonding curve to get those project tokens. If you want to burn your project tokens, you send those to the bonding curve and you get Give tokens back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it actually does. It's pretty clarifying. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has any questions about this. Please feel free to chime in and ask anything.
I have a question, but it's a little bit of a different topic. I was talking to a crypto group owner here, and he had kind of like some criticism around the whole crypto for good space, which was actually kind of refreshing because everyone I've met is really on board, and obviously I am too, or I wouldn't be here. But it was good to see the other side, and some of his criticisms were around why, and I'm not sure I answered it correctly, so I'd like to hear how you would answer it, Lauren. One was, if you guys are doing good, why do you need a token, right? Because when you start introducing a token, you start introducing people thinking that it's an investment. And right now in the bear market, the token's worth 4 cents, right? It's like, so someone had invested 10,000, that's gone essentially down to like nothing. So his criticism was around why even have a token economy if this is really for good, if this is really like the way I can share how I answered it, but I'm actually more curious to hear how you would answer that. And the other part too was I used the whole because it was on the presentation, and I really loved the positioning of, like basically our donors become shareholders. But then the criticism was around that was they don't actually have ownership. So maybe you should check out your legal, because I don't think you're allowed to say that. So I was just curious about the other side and how objections, criticisms, maybe how you would answer that. And yeah, I think it's important to know how to handle those kinds of comments or questions or concerns.
Yeah, wait, so I mean, there were a couple of different points. I don't know which one you want me to get to first. You were saying the first one is why would you have a token if you're really doing something for good?
Yeah, because his argument was the token, people are going into it thinking it's an investment. And like, for example, the case he used was in a bear market, which we are now. Someone puts in 10,000, it's essentially gone to zero. So his whole thing was, why do you even need a token? Tokens are just there to make the founders rich. And if this is really...
This is like, I think this person who's asking this question doesn't really understand like the different use cases of tokens. Like tokenomics is a complex thing. Like tokens have different utility. Like there's non-transferable tokens, there's transferable tokens, and there's stable tokens that have like different kind of reasons that they're stable behind them. And there's like different tokens for different purposes. So I think like, rather than saying like all tokens are bad, it's like the question should be like, what is the utility of your token? Like, what does your token do? What's the purpose of your token? And like, how does this add value? So like in the case of Giveth, like, I mean, we created a token and as a main, like with GERVs in mind, you know, like before we launched the Give economy, give backs, give power, GERVs, all of this was in the plan, in the roadmap. Like this is where we're going. So it's like we created the Give token so that we could reward donors with governance over the platform. And then so that we could have those donors be able to signal support on projects, earn a yield, and like boost them via give power, and then eventually become like the people who provide the initial capital to launch project tokens where projects become their own DAOs. Like having a DAO with a token and having people have tokens and different ways of voting is extremely powerful. And like we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, Tropical Mango, about like the different ways of voting. Like there's one person, one vote, there's one token, one vote, but then there's conviction voting, and then there's non-transferable governance tokens, and then there's like osmotic funding, and there's all kinds of interesting ways to like redesign the way governance is done and that voting is done, and all of this like extremely novel innovation is happening in Web3. And this is like extremely important. Like, you know, in government, like when we elect our governments, we use one person, one vote, democratic systems that have been around since the dark ages when like, you know, when voting first became apparent. It's like, oh, majority rules. If there's over 50%, it passes. If there's under 50%, it doesn't. But there's actually like it actually doesn't make sense. There's a lot of criticism about like each different kind of governance style. And so we're like making governance better in Web3 with tokens. And like conviction voting is like one interesting kind of like governance thing where with conviction voting that we have in the Give Garden, you use your Give tokens to signal support on proposals that you think should be funded by Giveth. And when your voting power is a function of both the number of tokens you have and also the time you leave them for. So this is why it's called conviction voting. It's like if you have more conviction, your voting power grows. And so it's like, instead of just like, okay, the number of tokens, instead of just the number of tokens being the thing that has the most voting power, this would be very like plutocratic. You actually have your conviction, your willingness to leave your tokens backing a funding proposal is another thing that adds voting power to like, you know, making that funding proposal happen. So anyway, my point is that tokens unlock all kinds of interesting different governance possibilities. And the reason that Giveth has a token is because we want to empower nonprofits to like access these governance possibilities and then also have like microeconomies where the people who care about that public good can like rally around it and also like benefit from these systems. And like the end goal really being to provide like the most abundance for society via public goods. So it's like, why does Giveth have a token? Giveth has a token because we're trying to empower nonprofits to become DAOs. And then it's like, but like, what are you doing with that token? It's like novel governance around like supporting nonprofits. And like, why does any for good have like, well, you have to ask them like what the token utility is and like where that's going. And then when it comes to this, like, so anyway, I'll pause there because I'm going to have a new thought.
Pause, because I did answer that about the whole empowering DAOs and everything like that and the voting that came with it. His thing was, why make it tradable then? Why make it a token that's tradable? You can have all those functions. I guess this is a really tough guy. If you have all those, you can have all those functions without being it being on an exchange where people can speculate. That I didn't have an answer to.
Yeah, but like speculation isn't always a bad thing, and speculation actually can like help many token economies. Like in the case, like if a nonprofit project had a DAO and they had their own token, there's like people who are buying the tokens because they care and blah blah blah, and then other people like, oh, people care about this, so then they're buying the token and they're helping to pump up the price. And like, you know, I mean, like for, you know, okay, now I'm going to talk about an augmented bonding curve. So an augmented bonding curve is something where like when you mint and burn tokens, ¿me puede dar un momento? Gracias. When you mint and burn tokens, actually a percentage is taken off of like what you get back. Like, so you're sending in, say the token price is like 1-to-1, like TEC to XDAI. And you're like sending 100 TC, you should be getting 100 XDAI back, but an augmented bonding curve is actually taking like a tax, like a percentage off of what you get back. So you get 99 XDAI and 1 XDAI goes to the common pool. So the more speculation there is in this market, the more like trading of the token back and forth, the more is getting like taken off and put into the common pool that's used to fund the TC's missions. So this is actually like how the TC works. So it's like, speculation can also be something that's good for economies. And it's all part of this like bigger picture of like, what is the tokenomics of this system? And like in the case of Giveth, like we want it to be possible for people to be able to buy the tokens if they believe in what we're doing. And then they become like early contributors. And then, you know, when Giveth is launched and Give tokens are like backing all of these non-profit DAOs, it's like people will need to get more Give tokens and in order to participate in these nonprofit DAOs, and then that will like help support the Give economy, and then that will mean that like our team who's trying to like make these systems better can actually keep doing more, can actually keep innovating in this space. So like speculation isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's actually just like part of economics. And like one interesting thing that like opportunity that we have in Web3 is to kind of like, I mean, Ashley said it when I presenting her like my money game talk. She was like, you know, people, if you can like funnel the greed into actually helping public goods, it's a beneficial thing. Like we did the Give drop, and then people started like donating on Giveth because we rewarded our donors with Give tokens. It's like we gave an airdrop to people who were donating. So this is also happening in Gitcoin. A lot of people gave airdrops to people who donated on Gitcoin. And so now we've got airdrop hunters who are just donating to tons of projects because they're like, maybe I'm going to get lucky and win. And they're donating to projects, and this is great for those projects. And maybe they'll get lucky and get an airdrop. And like, that's also okay. It's just like part of this system. And like, how can we like best align the desire for individual benefit and this like financial greed with like benefit for the collective?
So in a sense, would it be okay to say externally that, yeah, we're leveraging the excitement of the DeFi mentality for positive impact?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like with the farms. It's like we have farms and it's like, yeah, jump in to support these DAOs of liquidity and earn rewards. So there's like people who care about those DAOs, and then there's people who are just trying to earn rewards. But either way, they're providing liquidity for those DAOs tokens, which helps that DAO's token economy, which is like the agreement, the arrangement that we want. So I completely think that that's okay to say externally.
And that it's not our main goal, but it's something we're also doing. I mean, I wouldn't say like that's Giveth's purpose, but it's also a part of the. We're playing into that, you know, like why not?
Definitely. Like our main goal is this like empowerment of public goods projects, this like creation of more public goods for society so that we are like out of these kind of like corrupt top-down systems. This is our main goal. But then it's like, how do we get there? Maybe by leveraging the greed of DeFi people, and, or, you know, not all DeFi people are bad. You know, I like earning sick yields too. And I'm also trying to help the world. So it's like aligning these things. I don't think that like most people are just like, you know, super selfish. They actually like, it's even better if they could like get ahead individually while supporting value for everybody.
I guess the thing with speculation though is there's winners and losers, right? So people do end up losing money. So I know it's like I believe in Giveth's mission and what we're doing is beautiful, but I do feel like that was a valid point that he raised. At the end of the day, people pumping and dumping, that creates speculation, that creates some people losing money. I mean, we do have to be real with that, which I think is a possibility. Like people are going to see we're in a bear market. So obviously it's like at rock bottom, but you know, when the bull starts and when everything's picking up, that price will go up and some people will invest and some people will make money and some people will get burnt. But I guess it's kind of like the free market philosophy, right? Where it's like the market's going to do what the market's going to do. But I just want to present because it actually like caught me off guard because I was like, wow, I had only really seen like the good side and I hadn't really seen actually, yeah, when there is speculation, there are people that get burnt. There are people that lose money. There are people that don't understand that, you know, in a liquidity pool, going into a liquidity pool with ETH and Give, those two assets aren't really worth the same, you know, like people don't really. So I think there is like a little bit of an education piece. We have a responsibility to share, explain like all this beautiful mission of Giveth, but also explain that it is leaving it a little bit free market style. So as to be kind of like, you do need to do your own research because like I wouldn't go into an ETH Give pool, you know, myself, just understanding the value of the relative value of each token. But some people might, right, for different reasons because they want to support it because, right? But I'm just saying like
relative value, it's like when if the ETH price goes up proportionally to Give, then there's not impermanent loss. It's like if ETH price faster than Give does, then there's a permanent loss. If ETH goes down faster than Give does, then there's a permanent loss. It's just if the tokens don't stay exactly moving together, there's impermanent loss in like every DeFi thing. It's not actually because like ETH is worth more than Give.
Yeah. It's just based on, true. It's based on how the tokens move, but a lot of times those tokens aren't super correlated if they're not both, like say like a Bitcoin and an ETH, right?
Yeah, but if there's a lot of liquidity in like a Give ETH pool, they will be more correlated than they would be if there's no liquidity in like a Give ETH pool. If Give is paired with a lot of like assets that are heavily correlated to ETH, then like this, the fluctuation of Give and ETH will be similar and there'll be less impermanent loss. So like, again, this is like part of this, like how tokens work and like in a bigger picture. And there is also like in life, there's a level of self-responsibility that people have to have. And this is something that's also very powerful about Web3. Like not your coins, not your keys, you know, not your keys, not your coins. It's like a perfect example of like, we're trying to like, one of the core values of Web3 is like self-sovereignty and like control over your own funds instead of like trusting like some centralized bank with your funds. You're actually in like full custody over them, and that like requires a level of do your own research and tread carefully. If we want to like not be like minions of a top-down system, we also like need to take responsibility for ourselves. So I think like that's one part about like getting involved in any kind of like investment situation. I think Corey posted it in the chat, like investment of speculation. We're trying to change giving as a sacrifice to giving as an investment, and then the speculation part. Yeah. Anyway, so
I think that's great positioning. Like this is kind of the cost that comes with, like, if you do want to get into this space, you do need to get educated because now you're not relying on a centralized power to make those decisions for you. And that's like I think that's a really strong answer because you would need to get educated how liquidity pools work, how this whole burning and minting kind of works, how the give power works, how conviction voting works, like a lot of education around it. So I think that is kind of the trade-off. It's like, do you want stuff being spoon-fed to you and then you have no like decision making? Actually, your money's not even your money. It can like get so like, I think you guys have realized that, right? You take out money from the bank, it's a big amount. They're going to ask you who, why, where, where did the funds come from? Sometimes they might not give it to you. I used to work in a bank, so I know how all that stuff works. And it's true. It's like not your keys, not your coins. So maybe that's a really great angle we could play up, that this is kind of like, there's always a trade-off, right? You can have it's like putting your money with an investment advisor. Like if you don't want to educate yourself on the financial markets, you give it to a financial planner. The financial planner is going to take most of your returns, because they're managing the money for you because you stay ignorant. But if you do the due diligence, you can get into certain investment styles where you kind of manage your money. I don't know if that helps any of you, but this really helped me kind of make the connection between kind of like the old paradigm and the new paradigm. So I would love to work that in, just the whole research part of it, because I think that makes sure that people understand that they do have to get educated in the whole economy and the whole space.
Definitely. And this is like where it comes back to like what some of the work that we're doing with Giveth, like these like community orientation AMAs, like trying to help people, empower them with information, like our whole support crew and all these questions that we're answering. It's like, we're here to try to help and share information with people to empower them. Like we are rewarding and empowering those who give. We want people to be empowered to kind of like move confidently within a space and like also take responsibility for themselves. And then I want to just like also highlight like one point that's like related and like coming back to it. It's like this speculation and individual self-empowerment, blah, blah, blah. Like the goals that we're working towards are abundant public goods for society. So it's like if Giveth's mission is successful, maybe you lost on the Give token, but now there's like so many community gardens that you can just like eat for free in your villages, you know? And it's like, we're trying to make it so that like we can actually have all the things that we need in society, like that are public goods, that people who are providing value for lots of people, non-exclusionary, non-rivalrous, are able to do that very efficiently, so that we can actually just like change the way the world is, instead of having like everything pay to play. It's like this like harnessing this like desire to like win the pay to play game is like a means to this end goal where we have more collective abundance and people can access public goods. So it's like, that's where we're going with it. And I think that's like a really critical part to not miss as well.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you, Lauren. That was great. I wanted to bring a topic that has been discussed lately, which is the business model. Like, I know that like a lot of you like maybe know about the discussion that's been going on, but like I think it's good that it's on the record in the call. But yeah, so how is Giveth sustained? How does it get revenue? What's the business model? How is this possible?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is like a complex thing that like we're in the middle of also solving. Like right now, one thing that we're doing is looking for investors. Like that's a lot of work that like Yas is doing and Tropical Mango is going to start jumping into, is like applying for grants and looking for investors who like believe in like where we're going, so that we can kind of like have the funding in order to like get to that point. Unfortunately, like the system that we're like part of, I mean, it's still the system that we're part of. We haven't like realized our goal at Giveth, in which like everything would be different. But like the way that Giveth has sustained itself, or like, yeah, Giveth has been around since 2016, and we were funded solely by donations up until the point when we launched our token economy. So it was actually 100% donation based. It was just people donating to the team who was doing work. And a lot of those donations came from Griff, who like, this is like his baby and like a big mission that he wants to achieve. And then with issuance, when you create a token and you create utility for that token, then there's demand for that token. Then suddenly there's like value based on like printing money. I mean, it's the same thing that the US government does. They just print money when they need money, and then people are like, and then people agreed because this money has utility to them. So it's like leveraging this kind of like these economic systems with the blockchain to then like provide like value to Giveth was the model that we're going with. And like if you watch Willie's talk he gave at, maybe it was ETH Denver in February, it was like building a future with no fees. And it's all about like using issuance and economic systems instead of revenue models in order to maintain systems. And like, you know, Bitcoin is a perfect example of this that Griff also highlighted in his last talk at DevCon. And it's like, you know, Bitcoin issues Bitcoin to miners who are maintaining the infrastructure, and the infrastructure is a good that anybody can access to like send Bitcoin all around the world. So it's using issuance models instead of revenue. But yeah, so we've never charged any fees on our platforms, but yeah, it's like, it's tough with the bear market and like not having so many donations anymore, that it's like, in order to like kind of build more utility for the Give token, it's like now we're looking for investors who want to buy Give tokens and hold them and like until we've like created GERVs, in which case there would be a lot of demand for Give to then fund these regen economies. So it's complex, but yeah, if you like jump into the Give economy research calls at all, we're talking a lot about like, yeah, how can we get more funding into Giveth? And like, you know, this PFP collection that Almond and Tropical Mango and Santi are working on is like another way of like trying to generate revenue for Giveth. It's like, okay, let's build an NFT that like has some demand, then people will want to buy that NFT, and then we can like give them benefits over Giveth and kind of like bring them into the DAO. And it's like, it's all this kind of like, yeah, how do we use issuance and blockchain in order to like get people involved and then be able to kind of like sustainably fund these systems that we're building.
Just building into that, what Franco asked, in this document, I'm going to try to order these answers that I'm putting right now a little bit more, because I'm just like dropping words, but I'm going to order them. The ones that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that have been asked more. So actually, this question was also asked to Mateo this week about how can Giveth be actually sustained, how this works if Giveth does not charge fees, what's your business model. Maybe if this is like a recurrent question, would be good just like to have this studied more. Also another one that's asked a lot is what's the process of verifying the projects. There's a video and documentation there as well. There's also another one that's a lot asked is how do project owners convert their crypto to fiat? And I think it's really important to also have in mind to not give people financial advice when we're answering questions. I think that that's really important. I don't know if Lauren, do you want to add something on these points?
Yeah, sure. You know, we created this Donors 101 video course, which I think is like pretty interesting. Like there was, I think, like a video that was talking about like converting crypto to fiat. The thing about converting crypto to fiat is like it depends on where you are. It depends what country you're in, or like where you pay taxes, or like what's in your community. Like you could send people crypto who have cash and want to buy crypto, or you could like use an exchange. And then there's all kinds of different exchanges that are more suited to different people in different areas. So I think like that's kind of like the simple answer. And yeah, it's always good to say like this isn't financial advice, but as like a way to just kind of like create like this like, you know, legal observation. And then with like, yeah, I don't know, the other questions, you know, verified projects is like the verification team is just like so pro, like Ashley and Nicola would be able to answer this question like so great. I always just say it like way more simply. I'm like, we look to projects that are providing public good, that have reputation at stake, that can like prove on social media the value that they're adding. Now we're like introducing these like regular updates. Projects need to be providing updates in order to maintain their verification status. But yeah, if you guys have any questions ever about the verification process, like, you know, Ashley's here and Nicola and Ahmed is doing verification, I think that too. So those are the people to ask.
No, I'm not doing right now. Only Nicola and Ashley. And yeah, if you have any more questions for the team, it would be great to hear you. I just wanted to point out that we are 8 minutes to finish this session, and I would love to, before entering to more questions, maybe to align ourselves in something that Corey brought out before, in which what would be a good process if the team is going to give a presentation, prepare a workshop, align us better to just be in the same page of these would be good to have a deck of the presentations that you and Griff are giving, or create our own, or what would be a good way of these to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that if you're going to be applying to give a talk or a workshop on Giveth, I mean, go with what you know. Like apply to do something that you know how to do, and then if it's like your first time making a talk about Giveth, talk to me or talk to Griff or like Matteo, who's like done these presentations before and has experience, and then can kind of help you. I think I don't recommend like reusing like specifically a previous talk and then trying to give it as your talk, because like I think that talks are really also personal. It's like you talk about the things that you care about and your personal takes. So like if somebody else was to give a talk if like I was to give a talk that Griff gave, it wouldn't be quite right because it's Griff's way of explaining something, you know? And I think that this is like something kind of like important to highlight. It's like, apply for a talk if you're like, I have something I really want to say about this thing. And like you have a plan and you have a narrative. And then like we should definitely make like a conglomeration of like where all our previous talks are and stuff, because you can just like take parts. Like there's a lot of great slides. Rodri's done a lot of work on like making nice graphics that explain parts about Giveth and like setting up this slide deck. So like using like another talk and all the slides from it to like put together a presentation. Yeah, but then
we have that. We have a on the Google Drive. There's a place where all the presentations are together, and Katabe put it on there.
Oh, nice. That's great. Cool. Well, that's awesome. So I think like using bits and pieces from other talks is a great idea. And then, yeah, like with like panels and things like that, again, I think it's just like speak from your experience and speak from what you know. And then like if you're going to be speaking on a panel and you want to like talk about the concepts, like usually before I'm going to give a talk or a presentation, like I get a lot of feedback from people that I know who have experience. Like I talked to Griff about it and Mitch and Ashley, and I'm like, what do you think about this? Is this the right way? So advice process is important too. And then, yeah, like for preparing for a panel, like find somebody like who is experienced in talking about something like that. If it's a panel on like DAO governance and you're getting really involved in the DAO stuff at Giveth and you're like, what would be some good ways of answering these questions? Talk to Griff, talk to Mitch, you know? If you're giving a presentation about like about the give economy, talk to me, you know? And I think just having these conversations and advice process is like really important, so that we're all kind of like aligned on the mission.
I wanted to add also that making some research about your audience can help. I had to reshape my discourse like a couple of times, changing languages also, because that's important to know the cultural context. If you're giving a talk about in a conference about DAOs, like Daoist, or then you go to a beginners panel and then you go to a workshop, it can get like some concepts can get a little bit trouble for some people if you don't know what's their context or how they can like click some ideas. So yeah, that's like a good suggestion I could give you from what I experienced these couple of weeks.
Yes, very important to know your audience when you're creating a presentation or content. And when you're speaking to someone, that's the thing, is it's always good when you're speaking to someone on the ground to try to understand a little bit of where they're coming from before you start explaining Giveth to them. If taking us back to the point of, do you want to talk about regen economies, or do you want to talk about, you know, if you do want to keep it simple? So it's a very it's best practice always when you're talking to anyone in any context to test really quick, like, you know, where they're coming from and who they are.
Yeah, I love that, Corey. Thank you for bringing that up. I think, you know, I've been thinking and talking a lot about like, you know, making talks or speaking on panels, but even if like not talking about talks and panels. You're just talking to people one-on-one about Giveth at a conference, or even if you're just like drafting tweets or blog posts or things that you're writing in the Giveth Discord to other people. I think like keeping all these things in mind is really important, and a lot of the things that we're talking about is like kind of brings it back to there.
Yeah, thank you. I think that this is super important as the team is growing more and more. Sometimes the message gets like se diluye or gets not clear. So I love that the team is open to review these presentations, to have these conversations in order for all of us to be kind of in the same line. Thank you so much, Lauren, for your time. I don't know if we have time for maybe one more question or one more comment, if anyone wants to like suggest something or add something.
I just wanted to know about the call to action at the end of the presentations. If that's open, if we can maybe have different call to actions, if it's like for projects to join or for donors to get started, or maybe we would at some point have some sort of special offer for them. You know, they make their first donation and they'll get a little bit of multiplier with givebacks, something to incentivize people to jump onto the platform and start acting, start doing, start participating. So I wanted to know if we have some ones we've already been doing, or if this would be something new, because I think it would be really great to have a little bit of a special offer after a talk for people listening and get them excited about jumping in right away.
Yeah, I think it depends like what the context of the talk or what the context of the audience is. Like, it's like, who are you talking to, and like what goal are you trying to achieve? What are you talking about? Are you talking about like the donation platform and givebacks and how it works? Then maybe you want people to engage with givebacks, so then it could be like donate to this project, or like blah blah blah, or like, well, you know, Mateo just gave this workshop and unfortunately he ran out of time, but like it was supposed to be like a workshop where he would then give people give tokens to then donate on the platform, so they're already like immersed in that kind of experience. So I think it depends on what you're doing. I think if it can be like workshop style and we can get people donating and actually getting involved on the platform, that like bringing that like, you know, I heard it to like I did it connection is really important. But sometimes it's like you're talking to just like a big audience, and like in the case of Griff's last talk, he's like trying to get people to invest in Giveth, so, or trying to get people to like use general magic services. So it depends like what goal you're trying to achieve. So yeah, I think it's like case by case basis, but open to other ideas. There's no set call to action.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you. I would love to be respectful with everyone's time. Thank you, Nicola, for joining, and everyone for joining. Maybe we can have a second session when everyone review this document, and just feel free to add any comments or reach out. So I think that we can end this session for now. And yeah, be just aware of the next sessions that we're going to have around Giveth Essentials. Franco, Lauren, I don't know if you would like to add anything else.
No, just thanks, Almond, for organizing the session. I think we should do more of this kind of thing.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Lauren, so much for doing this. It's been great. I think this was really useful, and I'm pretty sure everyone else thinks so as well. So yeah, thank you, everyone, and thank you especially you, Lauren. Like, yeah, it was amazing.
Yay! Well, have a great Friday afternoon, Friday morning, and thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good weekend, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.